Faith Formation Live. On this Sunday, first Sunday in February, February 7th, to some, to most people, today is the fifth Sunday after Epiphany. Some people know of it as the Super Bowl Sunday, but I know that the people listening right now are here for the fifth Sunday of Epiphany talk and not for your guess about who's going to win tonight.
So Super Bowl actually has a double meaning and double spelling too, because we used to do Super Bowl Sunday, S-O-U-P-E-R Bowl, where I was before. We'd have a collection in soup bowls that people would put money in and it'd go to a local charity.
That's
so
nice.
On Super Bowl Sunday, there's a Super Bowl collection,
That's nice.
They do it around the country. But,
Yeah.
It's kind of, yeah.
Well, welcome to this next installment in our Faith Formation Live. Today we have three readings we're going to discuss. One from Isaiah chapter 40, one from 1 Corinthians chapter 9, and we'll touch on our gospel text from the end of Mark chapter 1 today.
And then Super Bowl.
And then the Super Bowl, which
we will debate who's
Matt will open our Bibles put our finger down, and that will tell us who will win.
The Buccaneers.
It's like Buccaneer is not in the Bible. So, okay. We're just all over the place. Let's get started. Josh, could you put 15 minutes on the clock? Let's jump into Isaiah chapter 40. There are few chapters in the Bible that are more like start to finish, poignant, and memorable than Isaiah chapter 40. I mean, we could come up with a few. Romans chapter 8 would be one of those, certainly. Matthew chapter 5 would be one of those. But here, Isaiah 40, just from the very beginning, we get the Advent reading from the beginning, and then you get this. It is such a comparison of the frailty of humanity to the eternality and majesty of God, and we got that really strongly today.
Yeah, and mixed in the middle there is that gentle compassion of God in verse 10 and 11. I love that. Often at funeral service, I'll incorporate the Lord God comes with might. His arm rules for him, his reward, and he feeds his flock like a shepherd. Gather the lambs in his arms and carry them in his bosom.
Yes.
I mean, there's just this, like, as gently lead the mother sheep. I love that passage. So, yeah.
There is some Jobian in today's reading, allusions maybe, or a sense of that same grandeur of, where were you when I laid the foundations of the world, right? So to whom will you compare me, or who is my equal, God says in verse 25. Lift up your eyes and see, and looks at the stars, and then says, why on earth do you say that my way is hidden? Oh, I didn't have my microphone on.
Oh.
So now I got my microphone on.
We have to start over?
Hey everyone, welcome back to Faith Formation Live. Josh, could you hear us? All right, well that's great news.
Yeah.
Okay, so but I particularly love the that sense of God's majesty and humanity like grasshoppers before him. But then Isaiah asks the questions, why do you say my way is hidden from the Lord? Like, this majesty of God is not supposed to be understood as something to be feared, but rather it gives God the insight into our daily lives that we lack.
Right.
And so why do you say my way is hidden from the Lord? Am I right? Haven't you heard? Like, God is the everlasting God. He doesn't grow weary.
That's right. That's right. It's not that God's paying attention or his majesty puts him too far out from where you are.
Right.
And in the struggle that you're finding yourself, your way's not hidden.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think, when we connect this to the gospel lesson, I think that we have to put Jesus not in place of God, like in the text. So Jesus is not God saying to people, I am not, never grow weary or faint, but rather Jesus is the object of God's, like unweariness, right? That Jesus is the one to whom might be crying out and wondering if his way is hidden from the Lord, wondering if his right has been disregarded, and God's voice comes again and says, no,
Which is very Jobian as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jobian. Do we know what that is?
Jobian, from the book of Job, adjective, meaning. Okay. What else? Was there anything else from Isaiah 40?
No, it's that waiting on the Lord. And
yes.
That's hard. Because we're used to immediacy, and we're used to demanding and getting what we want, and when we don't get it right away, which you preached today, it's about that learning to wait and rest in God's arms, knowing that God is good.
Yeah.
And that's hard. That can be hard.
It feels infinitely more real to say that. It feels like we're speaking more truthfully about circumstance and about God when we say that. But we know that in our world there are so many people who just like, oh, well, if I can't get it here, I'll just go to this other church or this other place where like they're doing faith healings or they're doing these things. And so this church must not really believe enough. I'm going to go to this other, I'm going to shop around until you find the, and I just wonder if if we're burdening ourselves and God with false expectations about how life is supposed to be lived, right? Like you can spend your days chasing after immediacy, but I don't think that's the way of God.
I think that's a good word because, and that's a hard word for us in our context for sure. Other parts of the world understand that much better than we do here in the 21st United States of America, with our demands and our sense of entitlement to getting what we want.
Right.
And if God really loves me, God will do this. And that's just not the way life works. And the older I get, the more I realize that. Not that I ever believed all that in my younger years, but there's something that says, you know what, life is filled with the whole package, man. It's not just on top of the world every moment of every day of every week of every year. It's like, no, there are seasons of really downtime and uncertainty. And to know that my way is not hidden from the Lord, that even in the midst of this, that Christ himself is crying out for me, right? That's comforting. And it's like, okay, if I can learn to wait, I will be at a much more peaceful place in life.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was thinking about the scene from The Magician's Nephew in the Chronicles of Narnia, where Diggory is given an apple that the witch, that the lion had asked him to bring to him, Aslan, right? Had asked him to bring him this apple. And the witch tells him, no, take the apple, it will cure your sick mother.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
And so the boy is stuck figuring out, I have an apple that will cure my sick mother, but the lion has asked me to give it to him. And so he resists the witch and gives it to the lion, and the lion says, you're right that this would have cured your mother, but it would not have brought her happiness. Yeah. And that word of like, sometimes we assume that if we just get this thing healed, then we'll be happy. I think I'm not saying we won't be relieved, but the yearning, there's something, can we have the bigger vision to see that, and maybe we don't know this in the present, but can we have faith that even in the midst of this, that there's still something, another story that's being developed or told?
That's right.
I don't know. Okay, that's Isaiah 40. Let's go to 1 Corinthians 9 for some fun. More fun with Paul.
That's before 2 Corinthians. So.
It is. If you get to 2 Corinthians, you want to go back to the left. 1 Corinthians 9. And today we pick up, 16. Where do we pick up
16.
today? 16?
16 through 23.
Yes. Okay. Paul's in the middle of this case, and we started this last week, that he's making this case that that being free, having religious freedom to do things, it turns out isn't licensed to do whatever you want, right? And in fact, what Paul's going to say is, I used the license given me to basically become a slave to everybody else, right? Like, I'm like we think there's this independent libertarian state of Christianity that we just sort of like exist free from influence or without dependency, unless we need help from we just sort of totally independent. We're all like on our own land, just like carving out our own existence, and then like, and Paul's sort of like, that's nonsense. That's not the way of God. Like, the way of God is to put yourself in servitude to everybody else.
Yeah, show me where that works in any family.
Yeah.
Everybody do what you want.
Yeah, do what you want. It's like, do what you want for dinner tonight, kids.
Yep. Yep.
You know, it's like, you think we're all going to have the same thing? You think it's all going to be a family dinner? It's going to be,
Nope.
chaos.
We brought home the paycheck, so we're going to eat steak. You all,
Whatever you got.
good luck.
Have you gotten a job? Yeah. No, I think there's a sense that the key verse here we're building towards, I think, is towards the end. I have become all things to all people, that I might by all means save some. I do it for the sake of the gospel, that I may share in its blessings. Mm-hmm. Paul has so committed himself to the way of Christ and the news that of Jesus' death and resurrection, which I think forms the basis of Paul's sense of the gospel, right? That Christ has died and Christ has risen. There seems to be sort of Paul's, at least his sense of it, and that somehow we are all caught up in this like risenness of Jesus, right? That we're now part of this project that began with Jesus' resurrection.
And our work centers around what Christ has done. Mm-hmm. And there was a question that came to us this week about that. Sounds like Paul really didn't want to do what he was doing, right? Like,
yeah.
Maybe he didn't really want to go to the Gentiles, and that comes in this verse 16 and 17. And he says, 17 is an interesting one. For if I do this of my own will, then I have the reward, right?
Yeah, right.
If I do it because this is what I want to do, I'm just doing it because this is what I feel is going to suit me, then there's my reward. He says, but if not on my own will, I'm entrusted with a commission. He says, look, I'm not doing this because this feels good to me.
Yes.
I'm doing this because this is what Christ is calling me to do. I look at what Christ has done, and now I see this is how I'm supposed to go. The reward is in doing the duty of doing what Christ has called, not in doing what I...
No, absolutely. I mean, I see this with even with our kids sometimes, where it's like, it's the chore nature of things, right? That, the times that they willingly decide to like reshelve their books on the bookshelf is like a miracle, right?
Also makes you a little suspicious.
Sure. What are you aiming for? You're hoping to get, it's like, look what we did. What are we going to get? Because look, we dug down deep and did this on our own.
That's right.
Are we going to get more screen time? Are we going to get, But instead, when it's like, no, go reshelve the books, I don't want to. It's like, well, dude, this is the chore. This is what we're doing. Like, there's no expectation of reward beyond like, this is just like the work of the house, right?
That's right.
And it's almost like the work of God's house is this for Paul. And if he summoned up that inner strength to say, Lord, look what I did for you.
That's right.
I think it'd be like, and now what do I get?
Yeah.
And God's like, well, you did a chore. Like, you get nothing.
You did what I told you.
You did what I told you to do. Yeah.
Which is the reward, and that's the waiting on the Lord again. I think in some sense, it's like, oh yeah, I'm not doing this to get something for the immediate satisfaction or immediate reward, but I'm doing this for the long haul. There's something that God is doing in this work that I may not even see, but to live faithfully into it and to live it out is the joy and the pleasure of life in Christ.
Yeah.
That can be a hard sell.
That's a hard sell. Hey, let's take a look at Mark chapter 1. End of Mark. Well, almost. 29 to 39, we have one more story about a leper who's made clean.
Oh, yeah.
But here we have sort of this is the continuation of the story that began at the last week with the curing of the man with the demon in the synagogue. Same day, sundown, Sabbath is over, people moving around, people start coming to Jesus to be healed. I spent almost all of the sermon really on this today. Mm-hmm. What did you notice in the text that you found curious? Was there anything?
Good point at sunset. I mean, the waiting for Sabbath to end. We don't think in those terms so much today. Most of us.
We do not.
No. I loved the 4 points you brought out of the troubles and the fact that everybody came. I mean, this is hyperbole, I'm sure, but everybody came, but not everybody was healed, and that's consistent throughout the gospel.
That's right, and that could have been. Mark could have just said the whole city came and the whole city was healed, and we just would have left it. Well, he clearly is exaggerating.
Yeah.
But I was trying to do some math, Paul, and I was trying to think, okay, let's say Jesus spent like 2 minutes per person. And maybe that's a lot of time. But still, let's just say he spent 2 minutes per person. And he goes, okay, 2 minutes, that means he can see 30 people every hour. And let's say it's sundown when they get there. So let's just say it's 6 or 7 o'clock. And now it's, so 7 to midnight is 5 hours. So that's 5 times, right? I guess what I'm saying is you could get a few hundred people.
Yeah, that is the best case scenario, because 2 minutes seems to me very short, because I don't get a picture that they're kind of like going through really quickly.
Yeah,
I think they got stories to tell.
That's right.
And
that's right.
They want to tell what's
so
going on.
So even conservative, even with the 2 minute per person, you're still getting a few hundred people healed before like 5 a.m. And Capernaum was a pretty good sized city.
Yeah.
It was a trade city. I mean, it was on the Sea of Galilee. It had a bustling sort of port, at least for fishermen. Yep. So I mean, I don't know. I think we're going to go over here a little bit, but I think there's something about that. Like, yeah, clearly not everybody who showed up was mad, and maybe some people showed up just to watch Jesus.
Sure. Oh, there'd be curiosity.
Yeah.
And not everybody had to come who was sick. I mean, were it happening here, I bet you I'd show up just to take a peek in.
Yeah.
I'm not a rubbernecker, right? I don't gawk at those types of things, but something's happening, and I've heard about this guy, and he just did something in the synagogue, and it's like,
there's a buzz. Jesus has gone viral. Just to keep it relevant. I think so. They've actually unearthed this house.
Oh, it's Peter's house. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And they found that it's a 2-family home.
Yeah.
So when the text says to us today that this was Peter and they entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John, the early estimate is that James and John's family was in one section and Peter and Andrew's family was in another section. So this is like an early apartment sort of model, right?
Yeah, there's even some speculation that they were related.
Yeah, okay.
Some commentators will talk about the relation between those. But
so somehow there's, it's a larger dwelling there across from the synagogue, like just really like narrow street, like just out one door into the next kind of thing. So, so the story works, at least with what we're finding archaeologically. I didn't really make a lot of spend a lot of time with the mother-in-law. Her reaction to being healing. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of sermons that have been preached on that. Sort of and not in a sexist way to say like, oh, the woman was healed, therefore the woman served, but rather just to say the reaction of encountering the healing power of Christ is to then turn and offer something back to somebody else. Like that seems very much an early demonstration of what we're going to see with the apostles and early ministries of deacons, and just a sense of there is something that should be motivating us outwards into service.
Yeah. The response to meeting Christ is a response to act Christ-like towards others.
Yes. Yeah. I didn't spend a lot of time on the verb there for Simon and his companions hunted for Jesus, but that is a really strong word that's used as sort of maybe more for pursuing, like with an intent, always used with hostile intent. Like in this case, it's not hostile. I don't think Peter, but there is a little bit of a maybe like a
controlling.
Where'd you go?
Yeah.
Like you don't get.
You didn't tell me.
Yeah, like you didn't ask. Like what do you mean you're going out to the wilderness to pray? Like that wasn't in the contract we signed. You're here in Capernaum. And whether we take that to say like, okay, Jesus is sort of saying like, you don't get to control me,
right? Or
whether he's sort of saying, Peter, I didn't ask because sorry, I don't know who you like.
Remember, this is early on in their journey together, right?
Yeah.
They've got a couple of years to go here.
Yeah.
And so they're very early apprentices.
Yep.
And they've got ideas. Oh, they've got plans and ideas, and I think this was one of their plans. It's like, hey, we could make it big right here.
Yep.
There is plenty to do, and this could become a major, even a bigger hub than it already is. We'll have the fishing docks here, but we'll also have the healing docks here, man, and people will come from.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we'll turn into a whole thing.
That's right.
$50.
St. Peter's Hospital.
Oh man, that's great. I also did not talk at all about the fact that Jesus, it says that he would not permit the demons to speak, verse 34, because they knew him. And this is the very first occasion where there is the beginning of what we're going to later call the Markan secret, right? That Jesus, that people who encounter Jesus and have a miraculous encounter with Jesus are often told by Jesus, don't say anything to anyone. Jesus is going to tell his disciples, don't say anything to anyone, right? And it sort of, for those who maybe came up in an evangelical, sort of lowercase e evangelical house, who believe that we ought to be telling other people about Jesus, it seems striking to encounter this and be like, Jesus says, don't tell anyone. It's like, wait a minute, doesn't Jesus want people to know? Yeah. And then we realize this is where the human dimension of the Gospels come in, that no, Jesus didn't want the people to know because somebody was going to do something stupid or was going to show up and the crowds were going to get so bad he couldn't actually do anything because it was he ends up just being a celebrity.
Well, and which the messianic secret is what it's often called, right?
Yes.
And so it's part of it is waiting for the right time for this to unfold. Otherwise, you're going to have the Romans there very quickly.
That's exactly right.
Putting a stop to the work that's prepping all the people for what God is doing.
In fact, we're going to see this at the end of the leprosy story, just at the end of this chapter, where Jesus says, see that you say nothing to anyone, but the guy went out and spread it anyway.
Yeah.
And then, so much so that Jesus can no longer go into a town openly, but, it's sort of well, darn it.
The underground hallways are those secret, congressional hallways he's running through.
Oh, my God. So, 3 readings. We're getting towards the end. We're building up towards next week, which is Transfiguration Sunday. Again, most people are going to remember the February 14th is Transfiguration Sunday this year, and not. Some people would think of it as Valentine's Day, but most people are coming to church for Transfiguration Sunday. So
I love you, Luce. If I forget next week.
You got a down payment on that one. That's good. So until next week, where we meet again to discuss Transfiguration-related matters, go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Thanks for participating with us. And I know per Paul, to speak for myself, that we're a split household. We have half cheering for the Chiefs and half cheering for the Buccaneers. So it's going to be a bitter night for some.
Yeah, well, I'm not a split household because nobody in my household could care less, except I'm the closest one to caring. So I guess I don't know. I'm not even going to reveal who
I'm showing up with 2 signs tonight, and I plan to hedge my bet.
I just want good nachos.
All right. Go in peace. Thanks, everyone.